Going live.
Going live. All right, everybody here? All right. We are good, Brendan? All righty, folks, we'll start the meeting. We'll call it to order at 7:01 p.m. This is a special call meeting, so we need a super quorum present, and we've got every member present. And we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance and an invitation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Father God, thank you for allowing us to join tonight to deliberate some city business. Father, we just ask that you be with each and every one of us and just lead us, guide us, and direct us. And Father, just be with all of our friends and family, and be with little Brandon as he's still healing in the hospital. Father, just be with him, be with his family. Father, you just ask that you wrap your arms around it. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Still in coma. Still on life support. That was as of Friday night. I hadn't heard anything over the weekend. All right, citizens communication. He just left, so none. Consent agenda. Item number 1, approved minutes from the following meetings: 7/10/2023 regular meeting, 7/24/2023 regular meeting. That was Shelton. We got a Philip Weaver motion to accept the consent agenda with a Shelton Gilmore second. All in favor? Carries 5-0. No public hearings or ordinances tonight. Moving on to regular agenda, review, discuss, and consider action. Item number 1, discuss, review, take any necessary action related to appointing vacant Tyrant Memorial Library Board of Trustees position. We have an applicant here in our packet. I'm sure most people know her, as her name is Miss Rebecca Russell Bean. Right there. Have any questions for her? Feel free to ask her. She's been a lifelong teacher at Bartlett ISD, raising our children. And she is showing interest in being on the board. Any questions for Ms. Bean?
Start Wednesday if y'all approve it.
Any questions? Any motions? Yeah, go ahead.
Since I'm on the library board, I can't vote on this, right?
Him being on the library board, does he need to abstain? Or,
Okay, I have to
You
abstain.
can vote.
yeah, I think you can vote. I mean, it's just a committee, so
It's not a conflict of interest.
yeah, there's no money involved.
As long as we-
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I-
You know how they work already now.
Mr. Jones has made the motion to appoint Rebecca Bean to the Board of Trustees at the Tyrant Memorial Library. Jesse Lunda has seconded that motion. All in favor? Carries 5-0. And is that do we know what, is that a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year term? Do we know what the vacancies were?
I don't, but I can find
We'll
out.
find out if it's a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year. Might be like a lifetime membership. You never know.
Let's make a lifetime.
The 2-year? Maybe a 2-year. Yeah, we'll find out. Thank you, Ms. Bean. All right, guys, moving on.
I'm sure Dina can tell.
Item number 2, discuss, review, taking necessary action related to the GIS service area boundary map preparation and submittal to the Public Utility Commission by Schneider Engineering in the amount of $1,850 to Schneider Engineering. So that's what this is. House Bill 3 passed, I believe it was House Bill 3, and the PUC is forcing all electric entities to provide a GIS mapping boundary to the PUC by a certain date. And Schneider Engineers, who we always lean on for our electrical, whatever, engineering. And so they reached out to me, asked me if we already had GIS boundaries. We were good. All we had to do is turn that in. We do not have GIS boundaries. They can provide that to the PUC in a timely manner and on the right time. It's just going to charge the city $1,850. So we just need a motion to approve the $1,850 expenditure.
Should just be, my guess is gonna be your CCN, so your electric CCN,
Which is most likely the city limits
which is
boundary.
probably city limits.
You move that we do it? Mr. Shelton Gilmore has made a motion that we move to do it. And Mr. Weaver has seconded that motion. All in favor? That carries 5-0. So we will sign this and send it back to Mr. Greg Heika, I believe. All right, moving on, discuss review, item number 3, discuss review, take any necessary action related to freeze, unfreeze of new/vacant positions. So a couple meetings ago, we froze the hiring process until Ms. Myra was able to get into office and have some say-so and look at some budget numbers and look at the needs of what we do actually currently need and have some input. So Ms. Myra has been here a little over a week now today, and she's been doing a heck of a job between her and Philip. The city's kept running, and I mean, it's just been a good, smooth transition. She jumped in feet first, but now we need to hire some positions. We're talking like, what are we talking about?
So the permit tech, backfilling that was Rose's position. That's definitely a need we have. Every day we're having people call or come in to make sure that they're getting permits. Also, we're just getting people who want to develop their land. So there's a lot of questions about whether they need a replat or amending a plat. And so just having somebody who can help process that and work with them on that, because it does take a lot of time. So that's one of the high needs. Obviously, we are without an electrical department. That's going to be one that we're going to want to work towards getting. That way we're not as reliant on TechLine to do some of the operational work that we could have our guys do. So that's going to be a high need. And then the big one for us is also the superintendent. So that's a new position that we want to bring on board. There are some qualified candidates that we want to interview, and we'd like to be able to offer them the position to come and join the city. So those are the ones that we're looking at right now.
This is for electric or office?
So the superintendent would be over electric, water, and roads. So our 4 guys, and then the electric department when we staff it up.
Public Works.
It'll-
Joseph had that pressure on him trying to keep those guys. She didn't have time. Somebody takes care of that.
In the field.
And they'll be in the field, but they'll also be in the office sometimes, with the administrative work, thinking more proactively while you have kind of a crew leader out there making sure but someone who can really just set the example and start working with the guys to be more proactive about the work that they're doing out there instead of, we're fixing leaks left and right, but there is some downtime. When there is downtime, all right, let's get a little bit proactive about what we can do to make sure that the system's a little more resilient.
Yes, it'd be able to make it safe for gas. Question, I have actually a friend of mine, Katie, y'all may know who she is, Katie Sandoval.
Yeah.
Give me a pause. What happened?
So we did interview and we've offered the position, but it is something that is conditional and we are waiting on action for her to be able to start.
Oh.
Yeah.
So she has messaged me and I'm like, I can't tell you anything, you might want to call the office, those guys.
Yeah.
about it.
No, we interviewed her, so she's applied for the permit tech position. And if all goes well and council votes tonight and approves the unfreeze, then hopefully she can start next week.
Awesome. Even if we got three with that, still allow the council to make decisions on other areas of the city as well. Or is that gonna be that first of all? That's my question, do we give them a certain number of positions? Yeah.
We do. So the other thing is, as the administrator and as the council, we can decide in the budget what we would put forward as new positions. Now, one thing we can do is just looking at the budget with position control. There is no room for really any new positions, and we'll talk about that later on in tonight's agenda, unless we find additional revenue. So even if we wanted to hire more people, we can't. And so that's gonna be something that if you want to go ahead and freeze and only unfreeze certain positions, that is the council's right. If that's how you wanted to move forward with it, but also just from the standpoint of financially being able to pay for salaries. We are also just constrained in that sense, so we wouldn't be able to go out and hire. And I'd assume that anybody that wanted to create a position, that's gonna be something that my office or myself creates on TML, so that's something that I could also just say no to.
Okay, so it's not a new position.
No, that's a backfill. The only new position is the superintendent that we're actually considering adding. And that was something that, pardon?
On the line part, what are we looking at there?
Two. And that's in the budget, so moving forward, that's why I mentioned the budget. So in the budget for FY '24,
Yes.
you've got a superintendent, two linemen, our current public works staff, shifting one of the public works guys to code compliance or animal controls. Actually, not code compliance, sorry, animal control / parks. And then animal control / kind of parks, so
Parks, roads.
code compliance would then shift to the police department, since they already have two that are trained and licensed in code compliance. And that way that can still be, that business is still getting done. So they're, the only new position in the FY '24 budget is the superintendent. The only other one that we haven't added yet, but is gonna be a consideration for you all, is whether or not we wanna do that third-party CPA. But that's not gonna be something that's on staff, that'll be contracted.
If we freeze that, is that one position we're gonna do?
It'll be the permit tech and superintendent if that's how y'all want to move forward with it.
We have a finance, that,
Yes, we do have the financing for those.
I know you mentioned something about police officers, like this right now, we don't have in the budget for them, for another officer, right? I'm just saying, because I'm in Facebook jail, but anyway, I've been reading the comments from people that are road racing on, like, trail, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They say they need enforcement.
It, honestly, it's just not feasible with the budget we have. We'll have some one-time dollars hopefully come up, but not dollars that we can count on every year.
We gotta dig out this hole first.
Yeah. Because the moment you add a person, it's really hard to, you know, for us, once you add that person, you're adding a commitment to paying their salary for however long they're with the city. And, while it's very important to have public safety, I mean, the job's getting done with 3, and we're gonna look at just being more efficient. That was kind of the theme for, I think, this year, is just let's be efficient with the staff we have. Because it's lean, and it's gonna be lean for a little bit, until we can get our reserves up, because and you'll see it in the next item, well, not in the next item, but the one after. But the budgets, I mean, we need to bring the fund balance up, because right now it's dire. The moment we have anything happen that's gonna require us to use the cash balance, I mean, the city will need to go look for financing or debt, which will then impact the tax rate even further in the following years. So it's up to you all how you want to move forward with, whether it's just unfreezing for the superintendent and the permit clerk for now, if that's how y'all want to move forward with it.
Another motion, the possibility of line crew too,
Pardon?
the line position too.
Yeah, I think the line crew, if you get an applicant on that, you're gonna have to jump on it really quick.
I agree.
If you get applicants for linemen, you have to jump on it really, really quick, because
And they ain't gonna wait around, they're looking for work, they find it.
Yeah. The lineman for sure.
I think the lineman, that it needs to be an open, where we're open to hire at the drop of a hat, if we got an applicant. Rather than have to call another meeting, unfreeze that position, then hire. Lineman ain't gonna sit around that long waiting.
Okay, so we're looking at the two lineman categories, or not lineman, but
So the two lineman positions, permit clerk, and the superintendent.
We're not looking for linemen, another terms. We're looking for lights on.
the lights on code, okay.
That's be that we unfreeze the hiring, but we need to make sure that, say if a good candidate comes up and it needs to go through, your office first, and then bring it, and not just happen.
Yeah.
Without the whole council being aware of it.
And normally that's the way it should be, is
I think all the hiring,
needs to go through the city administrator's office, because we're the, I have to control the budget, right?
I think there may be an expectation, I think, some departments may not feel that.
And that's something that I'll work on.
Or we might, so. I think the motion that we unfreeze
Mr.
these
Weaver,
positions.
I'm sorry.
Well, actually, the four positions, looking for lights on crew, permit lieutenant, superintendent, and the lights on crew, that's two.
Permit
Those
clerk,
four- four positions.
lights on.
I'll say.
Mr. Weaver made a motion to unfreeze the positions of permit clerk, superintendent, and the lights on crew, which consists of up to two, linemen for the lights on crew. With a Shelton Gilmore second. All in favor? Carries 5-0. With all hiring running through the city administrator's office first. Item number 4, discuss review city's pole attachment agreement. So right here in your packet is a kind of a rough draft of the pole attachment agreement. This is not for adoption tonight. This is for us to kind of look it over and pick it and discuss it.
So to provide an overview, and I'm sure the mayor has more background than I do, but often whenever you have a electric utility and anyone's trying to attach to your pole, you can charge to have them do that. And so in this agreement right now, I think the standard for this one is $12 per attachment per pole. And it's pretty comprehensive. It's something that, I don't know if Lockhart does it, but I know that Georgetown Electric has one. And it's just, we have those poles. There's people who want to attach to them. It's a revenue source that we can take advantage of. And it's just a best practice, and it's something that it's standard in the industry. And so just wanted you all to review it before, because it is something that's new to the city, and it will come up on a future agenda. So if you had any questions, or if you wanted to see any edits, that way we could incorporate them before we bring this for adoption.
I will say that I had a conversation this morning with a gentleman who his company is looking at adding fiber internet to Bartlett, and this is the only thing that they're waiting on is the pole attachment agreement from the city, so they can proceed on with their financing of the project. And once they get this back from the city and the signed agreement, then they can start running fiber within 30 days in the city of Bartlett for residents and businesses.
Question I have on that is, power companies are forced to just come through there and maybe just pull it however they want to, get it, they want to get it in here, get the service. It will damage your pole, if they break the pole, they won't pay to fix it.
It does say in here, if you look at Section 1.4 on the first page, damage. So if they damage, they have to reimburse us for the expense of that. And that's something that we'll have to be on them for.
And I know that through Jordan County, we do some of that work. They do the engineers that do their whole thing, we change that before they get it, and they come back.
That is true.
Not that they'll find any work to change.
None. They're all in
Fix the light while you're up there, please.
tip-top shape.
Does this address any standards of how the installation is?
I'll have to look.
The insurance, he did mention something, I guess because he saw this packet online and he mentioned something about the insurance, that companies can only pull a $1 million insurance policy, and then you have to have like add-ons to get to that
To the
additional
2 million.
2 million.
Yeah, that is pretty standard, is to have the million, and if that's something that we have to move down, we can. And I think the million will cover, damage and
Are we gonna try to explain at the time, or is we need to expect whether we'll go first and then after?
Maybe we can make them trim trees along the way. We'll provide the
Maybe we can
chainsaw.
pick a route that they need to. I know when you get 500 fans.
Yeah, he's offering like 1 gig per house, so each house 10 gigs for businesses. So good. I don't know what the price is, but
Was there an amendment we need to make?
It's a lot of speed. so
yeah, we're not taking action on this tonight, so it's just a review. So there is one, we're gonna be changing that insurance from 2 million to 1 million. And to answer Shelton's question on Exhibit A, they would show a plan of where they're gonna be putting poles. So that would be something that the city would get in advance.
So this has a $12 per pole per year through, would we want to put through year 2026 or?
Yeah, I mean, that would probably be best, because if the rates decide to change and we want to then increase, we can.
So through 26 or 25 or?
You could, instead of putting a date, what I would recommend is maybe saying 5 years after the effective date. That way, you don't have to keep changing the form.
We talked about this morning about tagging the poles as far as numbering them. Do we need to do that prior to this, or is that even necessary?
Well, he did mention on the phone to me, he's like, because it mentions something in here about GIS and like GIS coordinates on every pole that they'd have to provide that they attach to. But if they're attaching to 500 poles in town, that's going to get a little bit lengthy for them. So if we had them already tagged, then they could just provide the tag ID for the city. But
You're going to GIS?
part of the tagging would include, ideally we would have them GIS already in a system, right, Mr. Gilmore?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't know if we got the money to do that.
We don't have the money to do that.
But if they're gonna come to, if they want GIS, we've worked out a deal where they can have, poles rent free for a year until GIS system.
Well, we're about to get our electric CCN GIS, so we'll already have a base layer,
It's just the boundaries.
a boundary, so not the actual poles. But if they would, if they did GIS, we'd be able to add that layer in there.
If we just tag the poles, and then they just provide those tag numbers to us, and then we go around in GIS and map those tags, right? You can do that, right?
GIS, anytime.
Tagging the poles would be, for them to provide us a tag number for every pole they attach to. It's kind of checks and balances, Other than that, they can just come in here and say we attached to, 248 poles. But we need to see all those tag numbers, and then, somebody can go out and check those tags and see, just do a little audit. Make sure we're capturing all our attachments.
If you can get a GIS at the beginning, that'd be optimal, just given that we won't know when we'll have that capability to send somebody out there to do that.
How do you GIS a pole? You just go out there and pull up the coordinates on your phone, or do you have like a?
You got a good one. Your phone's 15 foot out.
Yeah,
I got a high GPS.
I got like a little tool you go out.
You see the guy surveying up there with them all the time? It's the same. That's what it does. That's
You
why
got-
GPS.
You got one in the back of your truck?
It has a rate on it.
Has a what?
It has a rate.
A rate attachment with it? You gotta put a quarter in every now and then.
Well, it'll even crack up for a quarter. But the deal that we talked about on the map was nothing. That was just gonna be my phone.
What's a GIS of the entire system cost, roundabout, you think? No, I don't.
I'm the one. Didn't we do some preliminary pricing of like 90 grand or something?
Well, I know LCRA was gonna come in here and do, what was that, what they call it, a system study, and it included GIS mapping and all that, and, tagging,
This day and time, it is the first step towards your plan.
and
Where you know what you got.
LCRA was gonna come in here and do it, and just basically tack on over a 5-year period, basically finance it for us, tack it on over a 5-year period onto our monthly invoice. So it'd break down to like roughly $2,000 a month for them to stab it onto our monthly invoice. So,
We figure out, usually we just, we usually for that.
what's that, Philip? Sorry.
I think what we're gonna have a meeting. with
Yeah, I
them.
think that'd be a conversation definitely want to look at with them.
Yeah, we, Lowell and, we get Lowell out here in Quincy and sit down and visit with them about it. I think they're in the middle of a golf tournament this week, so it's,
Although if it's $2,000 a month times, if it's 5 years, that's a little bit.
even though
But if
that-
it has the feasibility study, that's a little different.
it
If
had
it's
a,
just GIS,
That's
that,
the pieces.
it had a whole bunch of stuff in that price screen you sent. I'll find you a copy of it.
Yeah.
But, you remember looking at it when we talked to LCRA about it? It's been on the council, on the agenda once or twice already to bring up for discussion, but we keep putting it off just until we figure out some finances. You know, I mean, I want to keep buying things that are,
Right now, it's not hard for
yeah. Although something like that will pay for itself in the long run, rather quickly. You know, I mean,
This will give you your mapping system, and you call these contractors, and you say, hey, go to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, they're going to look at that map, and like information on that, get your,
exactly.
this thing, that GPS, and that's how we all get around.
Yeah.
Use GPS. Look at any phone, go.
So
That doesn't mean we can't go ahead and consider making that the amendment to this and move forward with this.
no, I think this needs to, this definitely needs to happen.
it'll more than likely be on the August 14th, so the next council meeting for adoption.
Next week.
Yep.
We may send this to Doug with their changes and just have him run through it.
Yep.
And see if he's got any additional,
Got to do it
ca-
before
gotchas.
Wednesday, because
So
he's going on vacation.
if we can send it, we can scan it in, fax it to him tonight, and email it to him tonight, and then, follow up with a phone call tomorrow morning or whatever.
Yeah.
See if he can just scan to.
So the only
One day.
changes I got were the $1 million, and then possibly adding a 5-year for the rate, but it does say that we can change it every 12 months already. So unless you want to lock in for a 5-year contract, we do have the ability to change it every 12 months.
That's fine.
I'll take the 5 years out.
We'll get to the library.
Yeah, then exhibit A would be where they come in and provide you a scope, the map of where they're gonna run through.
All right,
Back to GPS, there's, you don't hit a lot of poles. People try to get you big customers.
How many poles do you think we have in town? You count
he's already GPS them. He just won't give us the GPS link.
I drew them on the map out here. I've been here all my life. And I've worked on them.
So that was just for discussion.
Yep.
We can scan this. If any additional questions, comments, we can put it on here, send it off to Dougie tonight, and see if he can get us something back before he goes on his little trip. But sooner the better.
Oh, thank you.
So, no action.
I think they fell asleep.
Item number 5, discuss review fiscal year 2024 budget. Right here in your little packet, your little packets. There's a lot of information on the budget too.
The Vegito.
Says we are El Broco.
So, I wanted to take some time with you all before so next meeting, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, but we're gonna be moving quickly on setting the tax rate, or at least the maximum not to exceed tax rate. And then after that, the second meeting of August, the regular meeting, will then move forward with adopting the tax rate and the budget. And just given that it is an accelerated timeline, I wanted you all to just have all the information you can before we go ahead and adopt that. And so did a quick review of the budget. This is at a high level, and wanted to run through some of the things that I've heard from you all as your goals and priorities that are currently not in the budget, and then figuring out ways to not only include them, but how to fund them. So we'll just go over kind of an overview, the council goals, the tax rate itself, have a discussion there with you all, and then answer any questions you may have. Again, we filed and posted the proposed budget on the website on July 28th. On August 14th, we'll set the proposed tax rate. That's not the tax rate we're going to adopt. That's the not to exceed tax rate. So after you set that, you can't go over it on the following meeting. That's the up to amount. And then on August 18th, we'll have to notice in the Daily Temple and in the Bartlett newspaper for the tax rate hearing and the budget hearing. And then August 28th is when we'll have the actual meeting itself, have the public hearing, and adopt. So just to give you an overview of the budget, this is where the budget stands from all funds. So right now, when you compile all of the funds together, we're sitting at about 5.4, almost 5.5 there in revenue. When you talk about expenditure, we're at 5.515. So our expenditure is higher than our revenue, which means that we're going to be dipping into fund balance. Last time I checked, fund balance was at about 180,000. That's not a good place to be for a city that's got a $5 million operating budget. One thing that we're going to hopefully work forward with you all is adopting a fiscal and budgetary policy in the coming months. Often what you see cities do is they'll try to have 3 to 6 months of funds at the bottom of their, pretty much staying in their account no matter what. That just stays in there. That's the fund balance. You keep that there. That way, for whenever you need that rainy day fund, you've got it. And we've got some cash to be able to finance other things as they come up that aren't really planned expenditures. So you heard me mention that we're tight on budget. This is why right now we're eating about $30,000 into that 180 that I mentioned that we have. So realistically, fund balance, you're looking at about 100 to 150,000. And that's just not a number that I feel comfortable with. And it's something that I think that we need to start increasing slowly and figuring out a plan to start adding dollars into that fund balance. It's not going to be overnight. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some planning. So as we see excess revenue, all right, let's make sure that we're putting that at the bottom line and we're not spending it. Because often there is a balanced budget to this, right? You want to have your revenue try to equal your expenditures, but at the same point in time, if you can, you want to have your revenue exceed your expenditures. So that way there's some net. And right now there's not. What that looks like by fund, kind of in comparison, 1-to-1. So the cemetery fund, your revenue is 22,800, your expenditures are around 16,000, so you got about a net of 6,800. Every other fund for the most part is at a net of no loss, no gain. Again, these are budgetary numbers. We do not have a good capture of our actual numbers. That's why that accountant is going to be key, because right now there's been no reconciliation to date on our accounts. So what we do is we kind of look at, all right, how much are we making in revenue every year based on just our utility fund, our contracts out there, what are we spending, and that kind of, it's very nice, fancy guesswork. It takes a lot of work to get to, but it will be nice when we can actually have an accountant go back every month and say, all right, here's what you actually spent and against what. This is how much you spent on office supplies. This is how much you actually made in utility revenue. That way we have a better, clear picture of where we stand. And hopefully in the years to come when we budget, we'll actually know what to, if we really do need $6,000 in office supplies, or do we need 10,000, or do we need more or less, right? We'll be able to actually look apples to apples. The other fund, the tax supported INS, that's the total debt payment we need to make for next year. And then the utility fund, normally when you see a utility fund, it supports itself. It's an enterprise fund. Right now, it's supporting not only itself, but also the general fund heavily. I'd say at around 30 to 40%, which is normal for a smaller community, right? Because it's your cash cow, it's your revenue maker, it's the thing that helps the city keep operating. But what I don't like to see is that utility fund is actually the one that's really dipping into the fund balance. The reason being that we have more power over the utility fund on revenue than we do anywhere else, because we get to set the rate for the tax rate, or not the tax rate, sorry, the actual rates for the bills. And we have, other ways to make money there. Then let's say we can't really do as much with property tax or sales tax. So for that's going to be one of the big focuses that you'll see kind of, and it's also something I've heard from you all on the council goals. So it's where we can really put our focus and figure out how to make more money, because there's a lot of money that we're leaving on the table that I think we need to start capturing. So the concerns that I've seen so far will just be that we're dipping into the fund balance. It's limited, and we need to make sure that we start adding some more cushion there to help us as we grow. And then that we're just going to need to adopt a fiscal and budgetary policy. It's a standard. It's something that as we grow, a lot of the Standard & Poor's, Fitch, any of those bond rating companies, it's the first thing they look for. All right, what's your policy? Do you actually follow it? What does your audit look like? So that way we have more ability to do some debt and take out loans where we can, so that we're not just being cash funded or completely reliant on grants. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was that the current budget for FY24 doesn't have any of the enhancements that we've talked about so far. So we haven't added in any of the AMI meter implementation or CT meter implementation. We haven't added, there's no new positions, just given that we really can at this point in time. But also there's a lot of other things that we've discussed. So whether or not we want to include a rate study, that third-party CPA, looking at how we can fund them. So right now, none of those things are included, and we're still sitting at a, 30,000 hit to the fund balance. Now, I don't mean to sound like a doomsday, but there is sunshine at the end of this. There's rainbows. Again, there's a lot of money we're leaving on the table, and our job's to find out how we can make sure we start capturing it. So just as assumptions, we're assuming a 5% sales tax increase year over year. That's a very safe sales tax increase. We're getting more businesses coming into town. I know we've got some permits being pulled for the downtown. They're going to be coming in. So I think that's a safe assumption for us. It's a conservative amount. And then the expenditures we did add was that public works superintendent, which is going to be very key in us being efficient and proactive and just making sure that we're staying in compliance with TCEQ. Especially as more and more regulations coming out of the state. One thing I'm gonna work on doing is making sure that our revenue or our CIP shows a lot of the good work that we're already doing or will be doing. So we've got a lot of really good grants that's going to do some projects out there. So one of the projects is the Transportation Alternatives Grant from TxDOT, the Safe Routes to School. So that's going to be a sidewalk that's built from, I need to know the street a little bit better, but you can see there from Road Front, Salt Lake, Bowie, all the way to the school. And I believe it's a 6-foot sidewalk. So that's going to be a really good addition and amenity. It will cross 95, and we talked about how we can make that a safe crosswalk. So that's going to be something that I don't think we have a lot of sidewalks, if any, around town. So that'll be a good thing for, younger folks and anybody that likes to walk. And this one, we're hoping that the construction will start around June of next year. Let me see, the other one, there's two actually. The other one's the Williamson County ARPA fund, so we did get notice. Is this the one on Tuesday tomorrow?
Yep, one.
All right, so we got notice from the county commissioner tomorrow is going to be placing this to give us dollars for those water tower upgrades. So that was, I believe, the standpipe, the booster pump, and all those other things that we need at our water treatment plant just to get some more resiliency going. And then also, not official yet, but we will be on the Williamson County road bond, I believe. And that's going to be up to the voters on whether or not they approve it. But if they do, then those are going to be a lot of needed improvements to the roads that we have out there, especially as we look at possibly having some subdivision and new homes coming to town that are going to heavily use this route to get to 95 and 487.
A new racetrack.
A new racetrack. Oh, there you go. We'll have a. I was thinking the gas station for a second. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be nice.
So as far as some of the council goals that I've heard about were utility focused, how can we start planning for our infrastructure, looking at CIP, making sure that we're, putting the money into our system to make sure it lasts a little longer. Also, there's a lot of, our rates haven't been changed since 2018. On average, normally it's recommended you change your rates or at least look at your rates every 5 years, especially as you're looking at growth. And the reason it's 5 years is because normally CIP programs are 5 years. So that way, every time you look at your rates, you're looking at all the new debt or cash funding that you're going to be adding on. So it takes it into account in the rate making. And so that's also from a water wastewater side. And then we talked about the AMI and demand meters. There's a lot of meters out there right now that are blank. So we're doing averaging. We're doing our best guess based on previous use. There's also some where we're not necessarily putting the right multiplier on them. And some of those are, and I'll show you in the next slide just about how much we're losing there. It's quite a bit. So I talked about how we're a little short in the fund, but the moment we fix that, that fund's gonna look a little bit healthier for sure. And the other thing was that third-party CPA. So looking at how we can actually start reconciling and making sure that we are following GASB and all the best practices that we need to just be, we're a city, we have taxpayer funding, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of those dollars, and that people they can trust that we're using it right. So the AMI and demand meters, and looking at an initial cost to replace I'm assuming 700 meters in the city. And I assumed about 250 for electric. And I think here I'm assuming 150 for water, but that's something that we'll look at. It's about $400,000 to replace all of those with an AMI. So that's a meter that will read it to you. So the benefit of that is now you'll have staff that doesn't have to go out to do manual reads. So they'll have more time to go work on the system or repair streets, right-of-way maintenance, whatever that may be. So that's going to be, again, efficiency. So using technology to help us be a better use of our time. And so while that is a $400,000 cost, I mentioned that right now we've got some meters out there that might need to get fixed because they're not either reading or there's no multiplier. So the ones basically that have no multiplier, if we fix all of those to the correct multiplier right now, we would have about $250,000 in our bank account that we are right now not capturing. And those are ongoing dollars that would happen every year. So that's a good thing. The moment we fix that multiplier, we communicate with those business owners because most of them is commercial, heavy use commercial of electric. We'll let them know that their rate is now going to be actually reflective of what they should be paying. And then moving forward, they'll have to start paying the right amount. So while that is a $400,000 cost to do that, there is money that we're leaving on the table right now that can help pay for more than enough of that, especially if we did a 2 to 3 year or 4 year implementation. Because while we could technically pay for half of it, the other thing is, do we have the staff time to even change out those meters right now, especially those electric meters? I don't necessarily know whether or not that's going to be something that we may have to contract out, because it does sound like it's going to be something that we'll have to, is it right, Mr. Gilmore, that we're going to have to turn off power?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do the safety.
Yeah, so it's going to be something that's going to take some professionals who know their way around electric.
I will be one here.
So that's going to be one thing that, is, and I'll ask the council whether or not this is something that you want to include in the budget, but just something that I thought you might want to include as well. The other thing is the water, wastewater, electric rate study. I didn't include the master plan just because that's one that is going to be a little bit more expensive. So that's going to be something that we may look at a little bit later on, not necessarily right now. Right now, I think let's look at our rates. Let's start building in, making sure that we're capturing the cost of service. So whether or not, what is our base the right amount? I did a quick comparison across, other small towns and then also to neighboring cities, and then some of the water supply companies around here. When we compare ourselves to Granger and Holland, we're pretty in line. Now, the other thing is we are going to start growing very, very quickly, and we have a limited water resource. So one thing that other cities have already started to look at is that volumetric rate that you see. So based on your use is how much you get charged, and that's your rate. The reason they do that is if, let's say, you're somebody who normally uses 40,000 gallons to water your lawn, well, when you start using 40,000 gallons with a new rate like that, it's going to hurt your pocketbook a little bit. And so it's going to hopefully change people's use to a little bit lower so that there's some conservation and you're keeping that water a little longer. So it's not just going on walks. So that's just something that you all may want to do. Looking at the rate study, looking at what CIP we want to roll in. There's a lot that those the rate study companies will look at, and I think right now, when I got an estimate, it's about $45,000 to do one, and that's water, wastewater, and electric. So that's actually pretty decent for all that they're doing, because they also just look at your accounts and they'll sometimes even make you a model. So that way, as we continue to grow, we can do some of it ourselves before we have to do an official new rate study. The master plan, it's important to do it because it's something that we'll need in the future. It'll help guide where our CIP looks like. They'll look at our system. They will let us know where we need to start making improvements or adding or replacing infrastructure. And this is going to be key for us as we continue to grow, just given that we have a very old system that we really need to take care of. And I know that we've got, a lot of roads that we also need to fix. But for us, it's let's fix what's underneath it before we start fixing those roads, so that we're not putting new roads in, then cutting them up 6 months later to fix the pipes, especially as we have leaks. And then the third-party CPA. So the city of Holland went with this model. they're paying $30,000 right now for that service with a firm out of Temple, and I'm waiting to get the full scope of work of what all they do and how often they do that work. But for me, if they're doing your reconciliation, if they're looking at your account and making sure that you're complying with everything that needs to comply, then that's going to make the audit a lot easier at the end of the year, and it'll make the budget a lot easier as well, so that we can be a little bit more forward thinking moving forward. And then the other thing is that it adds to controls. So right now, with our office staff, you don't necessarily want the person who writes the checks to also be the person who approves the checks. Just given that you may have trust in me, but as a best practice, you want to make sure that somebody else is looking at what you're doing, and that way that there's some checks and balances. And that's just the right way to do it. So that's something that we have this third-party CPA. They can make sure that, when I'm writing a check or when Miss Brenda's doing something, someone has some oversight over what we're doing and we're spending those taxpayer dollars right.
You think the CPA could go as far as pay some other things like do family electric?
Oh, absolutely. They'll look at discrepancies and they'll say, hey, this doesn't look right. Especially if, if they serve other entities, like other cities, they'll be able to help us probably identify. Lastly, and if you want, you can look at it here, but it's also in your printed out packet if you want to look at it closer. It's kind of the third to last page. The tax rate. So we haven't gotten the official numbers just yet from Bell County, but Joseph did a great job creating a model based on what the inputs they use, and using that based on the values that we've already gotten from Bell County and Williamson County. We were able to figure out where we think the rate's going to be, and it's usually about 95% right. 5%, we could go either higher or lower, but it's pretty spot on right now. So what we're assuming the no new revenue rate to be is about 50 cents, 0.505. So that no new revenue essentially means for us to make the same amount of money we did as this year, we would take the rate to 0.505. Right now, our current rate's 0.55. The reason that rate's going down is because our taxable value went from 101 million to 112 million. So you've got new money coming in. Really, that additional value is raising the revenue, which is why you don't have to have that tax rate go up. Now, the voter approval rate, this is all from Senate Bill 2 a few years back. It's the whatever that 3.5% cap is. It would be 52 cents. The number I want y'all to focus on is the tax levy. So if we went with the voter approval rate instead of the no new revenue rate, it'd be about $20,000 extra that we add to the general fund. The de minimis rate, that's one where it is adding, it's the taxable value plus $500,000. So that's why it's about it's almost $1 million. It is $1 million of additional. So it'd be about $500,000 additional to the general fund. I'm not recommending we go with de minimis just because it is a 0.95 tax rate, and that would be a very heavy hit on our taxpayers. But one thing to note is we mentioned that $30,000. If we just went with the voter approval rate right now, we would still be negative $10,000 FY24. And that'd be $10,000 that we're eating into that fund balance that we need to start working on improving. So what I did was I looked at a few options and played around with the tax rate and said, all right, if we made it 55 cents, if we made it 60 cents, 65, all the way up to 75 cents, how much new revenue would we be able to add to the fund balance or to just the general fund that we could use to possibly fund a third-party CPA, an AMI implementation plan, and that rate study that I mentioned. So my recommendation to you all is the option 6. That would be $143,000 that we would have that would go to general fund. So that's about a $254,000 variance to the voter approval rate. So it's a $250,000 extra that we would be adding to the general fund that we're not currently anticipating. And that would help fund all of those three things I mentioned in some form or fashion. The AMI implementation plan, it would be either a 3-year or 4-year. That'd be about 30 meters a month that we could do. And that's something that I think staff, yep, I think that's something that staff could work on.
So you're saying option 6?
Yeah, so that'd be a 75-cent tax rate. Now, as it relates to people's tax bill, I think it's always important to know, all right, how is it going to impact the taxpayer? If you go to, so right now, the median or average value in taxable value for the city of Bartlett is about $99,000. So what most people in Bartlett get taxed on for their home bill, for their home tax, their property tax it's a $99,000. So if you had a $99,000 taxable valued home, your bill would be $750 at that rate compared to the voter approval rate, which is at about $523. So the difference is $244, which over a 12-month span, the impact to what they probably have to add to their monthly escrow is pretty minimal. But again, this is something that the council will have to vote on. And so while my recommendation is to obviously try to use as much as we can while it's still comfortable for the taxpayers of Bartlett and it's not burdening them with a tax that's not something that they can pay, I think the 75-cent tax is something that is amenable. A few years back, the city of Bartlett did a 71.5 cent or 71-cent tax. And from what I've understood, no one petitioned it, which is great. And that was money that was definitely needed to just get some of the things going that we've already gotten done. I think you've seen that whenever we've done that, it's worked because we've been able to allocate more resources to the things that we're doing. And the only thing that I'm proposing that would have an ongoing cost, hopefully it'll go down for sure. Because, and then none of the things that we're doing with that money will be, except for the AMI implementation as well, but that I think will be able to pay for itself with the demand charge and the multiplier that we need to add. So that's why I think that it's okay for us to go ahead and let's go 75 cents, because none of the things that we're adding in the budget are going to be something that we need to support long term with that budget, and at least not at that rate, because everything that we're hopefully doing is mostly one-time dollars. That study will be a one-time cost, and then the AMI meters are going to be something that will pay for themselves, especially with the various. Yep. Mm-hmm. So, important things to add, things that'll generate revenue, things that'll find revenue, and make us a little bit more savvy with the dollars that we've got, and hopefully start adding to that fund balance so we've got some kind of rainy day fund.
Emergency operations fund.
Mm-hmm. And so I'll go to the next slide, but this is where I'd like to get direction from you all on what your priorities are, what you want to include in the budget so that we can be sure to do it. But I think the more important question is what the tax rate you all are kind of looking for, because there's no action tonight on this, but on August 14th, we need to be able to set a not to exceed tax rate. And this discussion is going to heavily influence how we do that.
Well, on the tax rate, I'll say this to be again, on the state. We're putting more of the burden on the taxpayer because things haven't been done right in the past. And that's not fair, because the residential rate owners and the electric rate are repairing the balance right now, they're supplementing the electric system that hasn't been built right. Now we're gonna add more of them, that's not fair. If you do your billing right, you bring in that $250,000, we don't need quite as much there. So we don't need to punish people with carrying. We need to make those people that aren't carrying, will carry their share. Those are the ones you look for, you know.
Well, where would you like to see some on the tax rate?
Well, I know it's gotta go up,
Sure, but I mean, what
but
would you like to see?
you're basing that on $100,000. Not all of it's been $100,000. I did some fast math, that's gonna make money worth 1,000. I'm already saying, and I'm just one. We've got, that's why I'm asking for the CPA, we've got revenue out there that we're not capturing.
Right.
And it's not just in the electric. We talked about the fees that we charge in sewer and all that. We need to attack those more than attack the people that are already under that. I don't need to be sticky with it. Fair is fair.
Well, this is where I'm going to see with my mouth shut, because I live in housing, so I don't want anybody saying anything that she should, I know, but I don't want anybody saying she shouldn't have any input because she doesn't pay taxes. And that's right, I don't.
It's
So,
a bad look.
yeah. And I never complain about it. Keep it cool, that's what I want.
I think we need to be real careful.
What's, when you say, you know, it's gotta go up? Which
Well,
one,
we need money, we know that.
yeah, which one of these options are you more looking at?
Well, what looks bad is that it's a 55 and it's supposed to go down 5 cents and we're jumping it up 20 cents. That's pretty rough. Pretty good jump. Okay.
Jumping it up 25 cents.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good jump. I think we're gonna have to go backlash and deal with it.
Yeah.
It's not the current ratepayers' fault for things that we're not paying. We've got to fix it, yes.
So this would be your property tax. But aren't we also looking at going up on your wastewater?
Well, after a rate study.
After a rate study.
But I mean, it's still gonna go up.
Another thing you gotta prepare for is our LCRA contract will be going up for discussion in the next 2 to 3 years, which we've got a steal of a rate right now. You will not get another steal of a rate, most likely. You ain't gonna get that again, so, that's another thing to do, those rate studies as soon as possible. That way you can raise those rates and you can start preparing for that incrementally down the line, because, just make some super adjustments. I mean,
But I mean, how much is just hanging there, just our garbage, our sewer, or what, I mean, all that kind of stuff.
That's the reason we need the CPA.
Yeah.
When we raised it at one time, it was not popular. Because it hadn't been raised in forever. And so it had to really be jumped up there. Where if you just do it in smaller increments, then it doesn't hit people quite so hard,
Yep.
you know.
Our report work man, rate, elevate the tax rate anyway, because we got the school. Yeah, you try to talk to them. You're had the same discussion with the county.
So if you wanted,
My share, but I don't mind paying everybody else.
yeah, if you wanted the general fund, just based on where it is right now, not adding anything. If you wanted it to kind of break even and not dip in the fund balance, and you're looking around the 5.5 to 55 cent. So it'd still be a raise, but it'd be a raise of about 3 cents. But that'd be no new revenue added to. It'll just be pretty much a balanced budget. Operating revenue, yeah, revenue meeting expenditure. And nothing going to fund balance.
What can we anticipate whenever we start getting subdivisions in here? Is that going to do to our tax rates?
When you have that much added in new value, new assessed value, especially if they're coming in at a higher price point, it'll drop your tax rate because you're no longer needing whatever the tax rate is, you're not going to need that much to support the M&O and the INS side. So it'll help drop the tax rate because now you have more taxpayers paying into what you need to operate.
That's what it's supposed to be.
But before we can really get roofs going, I think that might be a 2 to 3 to 4 year outlook.
We're looking at a low of 45 cents per year. We'll see tax rates. Variable of the other one.
Yeah, the de minimis rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not one I recommend, just given that it is such a steep hike. While it does add a lot to the fund, and it would help, add cushion to that fund, 95 cents per $1,000 is, you'll see it there, and actually the numbers on the printed worksheet are off, but that impact would be, for anyone who has a $150,000 home, it'll be almost $700. And 500 almost for the people who have a $100,000 assessed value home.
So that option 4 says kind of middle of the road, and option 3.
Yeah, those are a little bit more palatable. I'd say probably most taxpayers. While it's still a jump, it's not as big of a jump. And it would allow for some of the things that we're talking about. Because the other thing that could happen is while we want to increase multipliers, there is the risk of people, I don't know. Those have been companies that have been there for a while, so I don't necessarily think that they'll just up and move. You do run the risk, or it could bankrupt them. And so, yep. But commercial, while it's normally really great to count on, as we've known, there's been commercial that's come and gone here. So it's not something that I'd consider as much of a life vest as a property tax rate.
I think we almost have to do some sort of increase if we don't keep up with what we need to do. Some of these do that dramatic.
So if we went to option 2, for instance, what would we cut back on over here?
There'd be a way to do, so there's 30,000 for the CPA, 45,000 for the, rate study, so that's 75 you're looking at.
You said 45,000?
Yes, ma'am. So that would leave you about 10 grand. Now, the other thing that we want to start doing is moving some of that to fund balance. But some of that 10 it could go to fund balance, and then as we look at the multiplier and changing those, and we can have that then fund the AMI implementation.
Well, on the implementation, are you talking about the actual changing out the meters? Our linemen, they can do it, like I said, they can come 30 months, they can do one a day.
Yep.
They're-
Well, I mean, not just the implement, I mean more buying the meter.
Well, okay, that's what I wanted, we don't have all the meters.
No, it's to buy them.
Okay, great, now, I understand.
Realistically, we think it should self-fund itself as it goes
Oh, it
on.
will.
Yeah.
That will.
You know, that's kind of what we're looking at, so. You have to
On
know
the, on the AMI, are they doing the water meter too?
Yes.
Well, I know, but we're gonna do it at the same time.
Yeah, so it'd be doing the water and the electric at the same time.
That water will be involved.
Yeah.
So the no new revenues, basically 50.5 cents. Option 6 is 75 cents. What's option middle? That 62.5? That'd be option 1.5, right?
62 and a half?
Oh, I'm sorry, that'd be 2.5.
And I can run that real quick to see what that would bring.
I don't hate anybody, man. And I appreciate what you're saying because you're absolutely true. Absolutely true. It's I look at it from both angles myself. From the city side, we need revenue to fix things.
Right.
I look at it your side. Why should the citizen be paying to fix the city's past screw ups? Totally get it. I totally get it. Totally understand it. We've got to figure out.
You know, we get that fixed on the city, though, and we'll start working on that.
Look, the condition of the city, the current condition of the city is none of our fault in here.
No,
That's like many years in the making.
4 years, no maintenance.
Many years in the making. Okay, a lot of stupid payouts should have never happened. Just gonna say it. A lot of payouts that should have never happened. A lot of just demand meters went away. Doesn't make a damn bit of sense to me.
That's never put a period on that, and anybody shut it.
Yeah,
Talk about the
demand meters went away. You had, now you've got electric multipliers that have never, who most likely have never been right, in the system. You've got all kinds of issues going on in the city. It's just we got to figure out how we fix the problem, and it is going to cost us some money to fix some of these problems. Now, where are we going to get that money to fix these problems? That's what we got to figure out. So,
We define the money we're talking about laying by self-funded. All these problems, what else?
yeah, once some
Now,
CT,
some of them ain't going to.
once some CT meters are reading the proper amount, I mean, going from a multiplier of 3 to a multiplier of 80, that's kind of self-funded.
Yeah.
AMI meters, we got a lot of meters out there reading inaccurate, not reading at all. Reads, I mean, it's a proven engineering fact that meters are, they're man-made devices. They're moving parts, and from day one, they're probably not even 100% accurate. And so, the longer they're in the ground, the longer water runs through them, hard water that we have and stuff like that, even electric meters, the longer they're in there, and the loads and heat, and there's so many factors, so many elements. They're not going to be accurate. So, getting a more accurate meter in there, probably going to pay for itself rather quickly.
First thing everybody would say is it runs fast, it's running right. None of us run as fast as we did when we were 10 years old. That's how I used to explain it. You run as fast as you did when you were kids. Well, the meters are old, they don't run as fast. They don't run like they're supposed to.
So if you did the 62.5, you'd see at about 114,000 increase compared to the voter approval rate.
So 114,000, that'd be 30. So you basically don't take 30 right off the top of that, right? So 114, so that's down, now you're down about, what is that, about 85 or so? Okay, then you take a 30 out of that for the CPA, so now you're down to 55. And then you got a implementation of more AMI meters and a rate study.
The rate study,
And we got a
which would
study.
be also funded by the other changes to the utilities.
So 62.5 cents, I mean, obviously does sound better than 75 cents.
It'd be a 10-cent increase.
Good.
Whatever she said.
So it'd be a 10 cent increase rather than a 20-cent increase. Y'all are quiet. Come on. Somebody talk. There's no decision to be made tonight.
There is no decision. I
No,
just
no
need to
decision
know.
tonight. It's just,
I just need to know what your not to exceed rate is. So what is the maximum rate that on August 14th I can put on that packet?
we're not setting that rate tonight.
Nope.
We're just kind of giving her direction. That way she can start plugging numbers.
And start working the budget a little bit better and getting it to
Tidy
the
it up.
final place.
So, what are, basically, what are we leaning on? What are we looking at? What are we thinking about? Next meeting, setting our not to exceed rates. Are we looking at? We're looking at 70 cents. We're looking at 75 cents. We're looking at 62 cents. We're looking at no cents. I mean, you guys are the council. I don't even think I have a vote in this. I just got to take the vote, and this is a roll call vote, so I will call on each one of you individually and ask you
On August 14th.
yes or no.
I don't want to vote in it because it's just gonna raise a ruckus for people.
It's the law.
It's you were voted on council to make all decisions for the city. Now, if it directly affects you, like, do you own a bakery and we're looking at buying cakes from your bakery, then you don't get a vote. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're voted by your peers,
Just remember
by your
my words.
constituents to make decisions for the city. Doesn't matter where you live. You're still a citizen of ours.
62.5, right?
Yeah, 62.5.
You can choose to abstain. You always have that right.
But the,
Let's clarify something. Right quick.
yes,
You're saying 1 to 10 cents, right?
If they were at 62.5,
That's 7.5 cents, right?
from 52.
what are we at? What's our current rate? 55? What's our current rate right
Oh,
now?
you're looking at last year's. I was looking at the voter approval rate. So last year's was 55 cents.
So if you want at 62 cents.
So if we went up to 10 cents, that would be option 3, right?
Yeah.
Just your credits, right? That's what we're supposed to. No, I'm picking the bill.
But if you do the no new revenue, it goes down to the 50 point whatever, 50 cents.
50 cents, yeah.
Because we've had new growth in the city. We've had new value added to the tax roll. So, but you don't generate any more dollars than what we did last year. We're struggling. Just plug that in. We've made some adjustments.
we're finally at the right position, control of what we need for the
Right.
city.
We've made some adjustments, you know, instead of having 19 employees, now we're down to what, 15, I believe? So-
We are not exceed option three.
Option 3 is y'all's
Not to exceed
consensus.
option three. I'm gonna get my-
Well,
Yeah,
there's
no
no
motion.
There's no
action.
motion.
I know.
It's just discussion.
Gail just wants to vote.
We finally woke up.
Oh, you usually just sit there and be quiet.
Finally, Gail, you're a week early.
Then if it's the will of council, I'll work to just plug that in to the proposed budget and start kind of adding some of the things that we've talked about. So that's the other thing, based on what we've talked about today. Are you comfortable adding the 3 things that we mentioned? So an implementation phased approach of the AMI, and then the third-party CPA, and a tax rate, or a utility rate study. I agree.
That's the truth right there. I mean, it's truthful.
All right, well then I'll make sure to amend the budget, and that'll be the budget that we'll have to repost. And then we'll work towards getting it adopted on August 28th.
And I mean, guys, I mean, yeah, this is all scary stuff. It happens every year. We get the crap scared out of us when we start looking at numbers. But it's serious stuff. I mean, it's stuff that we really gotta find a way to tackle. I think we're on the right route. I mean, look, we talked about a pole attachment agreement tonight. Even if they come in here at $12 a pole and they attach the 300 poles, that's $6,000. You know, I mean, it's right. Is that my math right?
You're asking me to do math after 8 o'clock. I'm gonna have to double check that math.
That's 500 poles would be $6,000, I believe, right? 500 poles would be $6,000. And we got a lot of poles in town, and they're going to run all over the city. So we're looking at ways of adding more revenue into the city coffers. You know, see, fixing these stinking electric meters. We've been talking about it. We just got to pull the Band-Aid off and just do the damn thing. We just got to fix what we're giving away electricity. Straight 100% just giving it away.
When we fix it, we're gonna look at, or we can't do that with the rate study, right? The demand model.
Yeah, you'll have to do that with the rate study more than likely.
But-
I'll look into whether or not we can do it as a one-off, since it could just be an
We'd rather
ordinance.
have the rate study back and the meter test.
I agree. The other thing that we'll look at is also just our fee schedule. So for our permits, as development comes in,
Tap fees, fee schedule for
tap
permits.
fees, whole, as we're running service out, the city right now is currently paying for that service extension. In other cities, when you have an MOU, when you have a city-owned utility, that's something that the person who's needing that pays for. So if they want that service extended, that should fall on them. We're not the ones asking for that development. We're not the ones developing that property. That should not be something that the rest of the taxpayers should be paying
We're
for.
not always getting money out of it.
So that's going to be something that we're going to look at too. So I'll plan on we're going to have some workshops moving forward just to make sure that we start getting that. Those are going to be some ordinances that are going to require, education, public hearing, and then adoption. So that's going to be something that I'll work on in the next couple of months to make sure that we start moving forward on.
I think it's vitally important too that we have to address it. We wouldn't necessarily this council's fault for things that happened in the past, but we still have to operate and maintain what we have. So, I think the workshop is key. I think we have to look at every aspect as far as generating revenue. Look at what we're doing. We're not giving so much stuff away all the time, and that we really have to be very focused meetings and very focused plans to make it all work. I think that's going to really be key to really being successful.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not our fault. We got to figure out how to.
But it's our mess to clean up.
We got to figure out how to clean up the mess where we're not bankrupting ourselves and our neighbors. I mean, where we're not bankrupting businesses, where we're not running people out of town just because they can't afford to pay their taxes are the utilities. We gotta figure out where the happy spot is, I mean, I don't think anybody's gonna disagree with you that the infrastructure in town needs work. Maybe one or two people. But
Well, we take it short, that one pole, we change it.
we wouldn't have to drive, we wouldn't have to get in the car. Just walk right out front, so, but,
I think we should have it.
gotta be smart.
All
All right, no action on item number 5, any of future, agenda items. I mean, obviously, we know we got whole attachment agreement coming back. Tax rate. Budget. What was that one that Doug sent us today?
That is
I
the
just,
call for the special election.
yeah, special election.
To terminate the EDC.
Is adding more revenue back into the city.
Yeah, we're working on
We're
the
looking at all
Secretary of
kinds of
State right
options here,
now
folks.
to make sure we get the right language on the ballot. That's gonna be on August 14th. I'm working on also creating a
You said something?
long-term sheet of all the agenda items, that way we have a better plan.
We have that, yeah, that wanted that variance.
Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
August, we need to include, the variance request for R1 on 300 Peach Street. He has a,
Will we have enough time between now and Monday to do all the,
so August 14th, he isn't going to, he just wants to speak to the council. August 28th is when we'll actually have action. Because I need to, one, post on the actual property and then publish in the newspaper and then send out letters to 200 feet of property owners for that variance, so that way that they can have an opportunity, if they wish, to come to the public hearing and either support or not support the item.
anything else?
Then one way to find out, Chuck was here about this, the lots of small
Definitely.
neighbor's car pulled over.
Which one? There's been so many.
I think it was over, I want to say it was over Crest Cloud.
Yeah, the one back here, we talked about a month, couple months ago.
Yeah. We were supposed to be back to, there's a lot of water under the bridge.
Wow, man, I've been hit with a lot of
I just
things.
wasn't, I thought about it, so it was a year to address that.
Probably not.
At least we need to wait.
Another one that we need to
He
talk
had
about
two
is
options to put his house.
that Stone Pack Lane water taps. That guy he's supposed to call me again this week.
Drove by there.
I think we just need to turn Derek free and let him do whatever he can.
We need to try to figure it out, here, what's that, what I got.
These are how they form that little car lot, and they got to really call for it.
It's, it can be done, it's just a matter of,
Making sure we have everything we need.
Yeah. To, just thought the guys gonna bring fiber to town, we're still gonna need that fiber from the floor, set with holes and everything.
That's one of those things like, yes, you do, because the LDD fronted $25,000 towards the project. The fiber's already paid for, the city paid for the fiber. They're just waiting on the poles. City can't afford $55,000 to set poles. We got a split here. We got some issues, now they're gonna run fiber all the way through town at no cost to the city. But MDD paid $25,000 for poles. The fiber's already paid for, and this was supposed to be a mend the fences kind of project between the city of Bartlett and Bartlett Electric, Communications. Although, probably hadn't done a whole lot of justice over 11 months worth of waiting. Project started 11 months ago, September. You know, it's kind of like, did we really do ourselves any justice here with the co-op? Are we still the same old flaky old Bart that we've always been? You know, it's kind of, you know, what do you do? What do you do?
Like this, we deal with a lot of times. This, we don't have. We don't need to vote on it.
Now, the $56,000 quote we got was to set all the poles and do the swap over on some of these poles downtown that need to, you know, should have been done 2 years ago when the tornado tore them down. So that pole's got to happen anyways. You know, another one's got to happen anyways. You know, there's a couple of those that just have to happen. I'm thinking maybe we break out the 13 pole setting and just get us just a price on setting 13 poles, and then we'll have to come, you know, from our contractor, and then come back later on, our A contractor, and then come back later on to actually do the crossover, the switch. Do them as we can afford them. Obviously, the one downtown, ASAP, top of the list. I was down there yesterday. We got fire surging going on. We got all kinds of issues. We're supposed to come in this week and evaluate and see what we can do. So, city's screwed, man. We need money. I'm sorry.
Picking the poles up,
On the yeah,
they're laid out all over town.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not good.
no, it doesn't look good. I agree.
Yeah, I can't cut that grass right
Jesse can't cut his mother-in-law's grass. It's in the ditch.
I tried to roll over, I couldn't get my horse feet, I did. There's your water, you know what she's talking about, it's like 40,000 gallons of water.
So that's
I can water my yard.
Or along the house,
But-
on the secret, but.
we got a lot of work to do. We're trying to get better. Obviously, I mean, we're on the right path. I mean, we're actually talking about fixing some serious issues that we've been looking at for a while. So it's time to quit talking about it and time to start doing it. I need one last motion, Ms. Cooper. The Queen has adjourned. The Queen has left the building. Philip Weaver has swept the floor. We'll call a meeting at 8:34 p.m. All right, all right.
Say something under your breath. Oh, you go on.
Rebecca Dean, that's the only application we've got. So if there's more, we don't have it. She's good to go. She is approved. She's ready to start on Wednesday. You need her contact information? You got it.
I don't have it.
You got pictures?